Well, we appreciate
Good thing
it.
is, got the staff is great. Superintendent's been fantastic to work with, and most of the boards and committees are excellent. And everybody's working together, which is good. So
Good.
Okay, I see that we're live now, Scott.
That is correct, Mr. Chair. The meeting is yours.
All right, well, it's after the hour, 7 o'clock. I'd like to call the Thursday, February 4th Financial Planning Committee meeting to order. The first thing I have to do is read this little paragraph here. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open law meeting law GL 30A 18 and the governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting will be conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance by members of the public will be permitted. This meeting will be live streamed. We will have no option for public comment or participation tonight. However, it is being live streamed. The first order of business is approval of minutes. They were sent out to you previously. Looking for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Here a second.
Second.
So they've been made and seconded. Is there any comment on them? So all those in favor, I'm going to go to each one of you and you reply yes, yes or no. So Tom,
Yes.
John Rappa,
Yes.
Mike Hodge.
Yes.
Okay. So they are approved, and I say yes as well. So they are approved as written. The next order of business is the reorganization and election of officers. I'll turn that off to our town administrator, John Cudere.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is your first meeting of the upcoming fiscal 22 budget season. Typically, it is traditional to reorganize the committee, which means we're going to solicit nominations for chairman and vice chair, and we'll go through that process. So to get it going, I will open nominations for chairman.
I'll nominate Dave.
So we have a nomination for Dave DeFries to serve as chairman. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
We have a second by John Rappa. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Are there any other nominations? Okay, seeing and hearing none. All those in favor of Dave DeFries to serve as chairman, say aye. Actually, I'm sorry, has to be a roll call vote. So let me start with Mike Hodge,
Yes.
John Rappa,
Yes.
Tom Spataro,
Yes.
Dave DeFries.
Yes.
All right, so it's unanimous. So we have a new chairman. Next, I will open nominations for vice chairman.
I'd like to nominate Mike Hodge as vice chair.
So I have a nomination for Mike Hodge. Is there a second?
I second.
Tom seconds that. Okay, so we have a nomination, a second. Is there any discussion? Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Seeing and hearing none, we'll close nominations. All those in favor of Mike Hodge to serve as vice chair, say, well, I'm sorry, again, I got to get used to the roll call. So I'll start with Dave DeFries,
Yes.
Tom Spataro,
Yes.
John Rappa,
Yes.
and Mike Hodge.
Yes.
So it is unanimous. All right, so Chairman DeFries, congratulations. Vice Chair Mike Hodge, congratulations. And I will turn the meeting back over to the chairman for the balance of the agenda.
All right. Thank you very much. So next item of business on here is the state update, preliminary free cash plan, and the FY 2020 capital funding sources.
All right, so if I may, Mr. Chairman, why don't we start with the free cash plan? because that's really the basis upon which a large percentage of the work that this committee does is funded, the basis for the funding. So I know this was distributed to you by email. I did make a brief presentation to the Board of Selectmen at one of the previous meetings, but you as a committee have not had a chance to discuss it. So I'm going to pull up, Scott, can you give me, thank you. So we'll do a quick little show and tell. Everybody see my screen? So what you should be looking at right now is a 30-something year history of free cash. And basically free cash is the budget surplus from a prior fiscal year when you close out. It's essentially revenues that come in higher than you forecast, expenditures that come in lower, and then any free cash that you had remaining from the prior year. And so as you can see, it's a fairly erratic funding source, and that's because it depends on how your fiscal year finished. And obviously fiscal 20, which concluded on June 30th of 2020, that was the end of the fiscal year, we had just started feeling the impacts of the pandemic and the economic closure. So we just barely squeaked out meeting our revenue targets. The departments didn't freeze, but constrained spending at the end to make sure that we would finish out the year in a positive position. But free cash tends to bounce around and very roughly, will follow the general economic times, because when things are improving and the economy is doing well, revenues tend to come in higher than you forecast. And so you tend to finish the year in a little bit better positive position. There's always one-time things. It could be settlements. It could be a large building permit. There's that can bounce these numbers around quite a bit. But the thing to make note of is if you look starting in fiscal 14 through fiscal 20, despite that, the fact that it bounced up a little bit with the close of fiscal 19, it's been a pretty slower downward trend of budget surplus. And the reason is, in general terms, is that the budgets have gotten tighter. The revenue estimates, because the economy has been slower, have gotten more tight. The budgets aren't returning, things. We're budgeting much tighter. And at the end of the fiscal year, when we close, our target is to be 1 to 3%. Usually we try to hover around 2% of what was budgeted. So in other words, revenues, we generally want to be within about 2% of what we forecast, and the budget expenditures, because you don't want to overexpend, obviously, and finish the year in the red, but your expenditures generally want to return about 2%. And so in its total, as a percentage of the operating budget, we want to hover around, 2 to 3%. And if you have watched our auditor come in to present the annual audits every year to the Board of Selectmen, our auditor will tell you we have been spot on. And if you did any tighter or any better than we've done, it's just dumb luck, and you might be cutting things a little bit too close. So although it seems like a lot to finish the year, 2 million to the plus, you're really within a percentage point or two of your budget, and you just can't be any more accurate really than that. But it'll be up a little bit higher when the economy is doing well and revenues are on the upswing, and it'll be a little bit tighter when the economy is on the downswing. So, but you can see, a tightening of free cash moving forward. So why is this important to the Financial Planning Committee? Well, it's important to you guys because since fiscal 12, when we passed a free cash policy that basically says this budget surplus from the prior year, we aren't going to take that surplus and just roll it into the operating budget because it creates a structural deficit, right? And so we passed a policy in 2010 that took effect in fiscal 2012 that essentially says budget surplus from the prior year can only be used for a few potential expenditures. Emergency appropriations, to put it into your stabilization rainy day fund, to pay down debt essentially, or to pay for one-time expenses like capital. Budget surplus from the prior year is the perfect partner to paying for capital projects. And the reason for that is when you close out the year and you have budget surplus, you buy equipment, you buy vehicles, and it prevents you from having to finance those. So I always say it's like in your private life, if your washer or your dryer breaks, you can charge it on the credit card, but you'll pay interest on that, right? Generally speaking, if you don't make just the minimum payments. But you want to be able to pay cash for those things and save your debt capacity for large projects like a house or a vehicle, right? And of course, you never want to spend debt on things like a vacation, right? So we don't want to spend our debt or issue debt for recurring operating costs like personnel and recurring expenses. So free cash is the primary funding source that we have used to fund smaller scale capital projects. And when I say smaller scale, I basically mean things that aren't $1 million+ dollars. So since fiscal 12, we have done about $12 million in pay-as-you-go capital. So we have not financed a pickup truck, a police cruiser, or even a fire engine pumper. In fact, we have been able, through this conservative financial approach, we've been able to actually pay cash for the roofs on 2 of our schools, which generally run around $500,000 or $600,000. So that's a great position for us to be in, because all the while we're paying as we go for this capital. It's like, again, in your personal life, if you're not charging up the credit card, right, the whole time you're paying it off. So you wind up improving your financial condition twofold, because you're investing in your capital, so you're not deferring maintenance there, but you're also not incurring debt. So you're paying off debt, so you're freeing up money in the operating budget. So all around, it's a win for us. The difficulty is that model works great until things get very tight, or you have something unexpected like a pandemic that shuts down the economy. So what I have on the screen here is it's like a tale of 2 capital budgets. So fiscal 19, the fiscal 21 free cash plan, that's the one at the top. It's based on the fiscal 20 year end. The fiscal year that ended on June 30th of 20. And by the way, I know it gets confusing, but we close out fiscal 20, and that's what's being used for fiscal 2022's budget. So in this case here, there's a lag. But if you look at the free cash for this fiscal 21 plan, we had $2.85 million. So normally we wouldn't have, these numbers would look very different. The appropriated reserve account for 375, that's normally 175,000, but because of the pandemic hitting for fiscal 21, we decided to put a little bit extra money. Instead of spending it on capital in 21, we put it in our emergency reserve account. So if something happened, if the federal stimulus money or aid didn't come in fiscal 21, we'd have that as a reserve. The other thing we did, and this is the first time we have done this since fiscal 12, is in 21, we put $878,000 into the operating budget. Now, by policy, our cap is $500,000, roughly 1% of the operating budget. But because of all the unknowns and because of the immediate loss of revenue, we postponed some capital and we used some of our reserves, our financial reserves, to bolster the fiscal 21 operating budget. Now, that's fine to do in an emergency, in a pandemic. And by the way, this is an emergency. It is a declared emergency at state level, and the town of Northborough declared emergency. So that's okay to do that once. The problem is, once you add these additional one-time revenues, you got to get off that sometime, right? Because you're creating a structural deficit. But let me just continue down. So in 21, stabilization fund here, the good news is we didn't have to draw from our rainy day fund, but we were unable to contribute to it. Very reasonable position. And then what you see here at the bottom the capital investments in fiscal 21 dropped to $712,000. That's a very low amount. Had we not had the impacts of the pandemic, that number would have been about $1.4 million. That's a good amount of money to buy equipment, vehicles, and to invest in your routine capital. 712, we had to punt and we pushed off covert projects, a loader, and a couple of other vehicles, including a police cruiser. So that's what we did. So we punted off. So now let me come down to the table on the bottom here. This is the proposed preliminary free cash plan for fiscal 2022. This is what you guys are going to spend the balance of your meetings over the next month and a half discussing. So right off the bat, you can see the year-end surplus was significantly less. It was went from 2.85 to 1.98 million. However, based on the meeting that we had on December 14th, the financial trend monitoring and the assumptions that we're using for the fiscal 22 operating budget, we are getting out of using the additional revenues, one-time revenues in the operating budget. So we're going back to the best case scenario under our policy. So as you look down, we have less free cash, but we're going to get back to 175,000 in our appropriated reserve account, our emergency account, because as we go into fiscal 2022, we envision the economy stabilizing, the vaccine being administered, and things getting back to what everybody keeps referring to as the new normal, whatever that may be. Operating budget wise, we're back down to our policy target of 500,000. Again, things aren't bad, but they're not so good that we can afford to put money in the savings account. So again, we're not drawing from the stabilization fund, but we're not adding to it either in fiscal 2022. I think that's a reasonable position to be in. So that brings you down to capital projects. We have $805,000 roughly for pay-as-you-go capital, which sounds like a lot of money. And it is, but on a scale of a $65–70 million budget, it's really not that much. And just to put it in simple terms, right out of the gate, we spend typically 300,000 of that on our pavement management investment. So that that takes $300,000 right off the top. And so we'll be talking about as we move forward what projects, because again, remember now we've created a little bit of bubble because we kicked and deferred projects from last year. So we've got that little bit of a bubble, and now we have less money to do pay as you go. So we're going to create another little bit of a bubble in fiscal 22 as well. So we need to work through that, and we may need to have a discussion in fiscal 2023 if things don't improve and our free cash levels don't come back healthier. We may need to talk about alternative financing, lease arrangements for equipment, or more likely potentially issuing general obligation bonds for some of these larger projects like a school roof for $600,000. I don't think we're going to be able to pay cash for those. So we're not in a bad, again, when something bad happens, like a pandemic and you're in an emergency crisis, our plan all along was this was our pressure relief valve in the immediate fiscal year, so we don't have to start slashing and laying off people and reducing services. So it buys you a little bit of a time to postpone, to give some thoughtful, to give a thoughtful approach for how we're going to get back on track with our capital investments. So this is really all according to plan, but it certainly is going to impact how many capital projects we could do in fiscal 2022 on a pay-as-you-go basis. So that's where we are. Now, the other thing that the plan typically does is we leave some free cash remaining. We don't spend it all. Think about, I always like to do this for folks, like think about stabilization fund as your personal savings account, and free cash is kind of your checking account, right? So you spend out of your checking account for things that you want to acquire. You leave a certain balance in there so it's readily accessible. And if the balance builds up significantly, you transfer from your checking to your savings, right? That's what we're talking about here on a larger scale. The numbers are bigger, but stabilizations are savings account. Free cash is a more easily accessible free cash. So we, by design, spend down the money in the checking account in the free cash to acquire capital. That's what we do. But we leave a balance. And so under this plan here, down at the bottom, you see $500,000 remaining. So that's the preliminary free cash plan. Now, the memo that I gave you has a lot of information in there, a lot of background, especially for newer members. You know, what is free cash? Why do we identify it as a one-time revenue in the budgetary process? I gives you the history. What's the difference between free cash policy and the free cash plan? And what are the acceptable uses of free cash under our policy? So all that is included in the memo. I know most of you have seen this stuff many, many times. This policy and this implementation process has been our claim to fame in Northborough. I've had more communities emulate what we do here. In fact, a good friend of mine is the deputy director of the Department of Revenue for the state, and this is what he constantly is hammering on other communities to do, to get off using surplus funds from a prior year and rolling into your operating budget. Instead, use it for capital. So I'm going to stop for a moment. Does anybody have any questions about the preliminary free cash plan at this point? The whole point of the one other piece, and it's in the memo, but not on the screen, is under the plan, I'm required to put this together for the boards and committees to see as sort of a preliminary approach to how we're going to use this budget surplus. One of the considerations that I have to provide is, if we do this, what happens to our level of financial reserves? And so if we go through this process, so right now at the close of fiscal 20, our financial reserves we're at 8.9%. So if we implement this plan as you have before you, and we spend all $805,000 on capital this year, as I would recommend we do, our reserves would be 8.2%. Our policy is to keep our financial reserves between 5 and 10%. Really, the bond rating agencies want to see us dancing between 8 and 10. That tells them that we're very healthy, and when we go into the bond market, we will get the best possible rate that we can. So we're dead solid in terms of our reserves. You can spend according to this plan, knowing that in fiscal 2022, we'll still have 8.2% in reserves, including the $500,000 left over. So this is more of a traditional free cash plan that you've seen. The one at the top, the fiscal 2021, is oh boy, we have a emergency going on and we need to build some extra liquidity so that we can pivot and deal with some of these potential unknowns. Now, the positive thing, guys, that I'm happy to report to you is, we're halfway through this fiscal year, and the state wound up making us whole on our state aid. Our local receipts have done better because, again, the economy opened back up. Remember, when we were looking at this plan, the economy was shut down. Nobody knew when it was going to open up. And if it opened up, was it going to close down again? So we have not used any of the $375,000 in our emergency reserve. And we haven't touched any of this money down here, this remaining available free cash. That's actually rolled forward into the next year. So far, knock on wood, we're in good shape. And because we're in good shape and we see things improving, we're going to get back to a more traditional free cash plan this year. So before I stop screen sharing through the chair, does anybody have any questions about this?
Hey, John, I got a quick question.
Yes, sir.
So just curious about with COVID last year, were there any projects that might get pushed to this year that might need any free cash or other funds?
So projects from town meeting from fiscal 21, the fiscal year that we're in the middle of right now, those projects that got delayed are the ones that now are bunching up, and you'll be discussing some of those delayed projects as part of your fiscal 2022 appropriations. Otherwise, all the projects that were approved at town meeting have moved forward and are in progress. And actually, that's a great transition to the next item on your agenda, which is a DPW project update. The lion's share of projects generally through the capital budget tend to go to DPW, equipment and infrastructure and things of that nature. So DPW Director Scott Charpentier is here tonight, and you were provided with a memo, but he's going to walk you through that memo. We'll give you an update on all the projects that we have that are ongoing at the moment. And then at your next meeting, we'll be talking about, adding on to what projects we think we're going to do for 2022. Any other questions, again, through the chair, that I can answer before we move on to the next item?
John,
Yes.
question.
Yep.
Any major things jump out at you that are ahead of plan or behind plan from where we started?
In terms of projects that were approved, or in terms of projects that are we'd like to be doing?
The latter.
So, yeah, so we had to postpone a number of equipment acquisitions, a loader, some trucks, a police cruiser. We did move forward with, some of the building projects, particularly the water and sewer projects, and Scott will give you an update on those in a moment. And I think the exercise is to try to figure what can we push out, and what needs to come forward for funding this year. I just see some vehicles coming forward. We don't, as I said, we don't have any major building projects. We have the fire station project that is coming forward, and I can give you an update on that towards the end of your meeting. But that's not coming forward to town meeting this year. It'll come forward the subsequent year. So, and then we also have a new superintendent, Greg Martineau. So as a new superintendent, Greg has a new operations manager, and as is typical, they sort of did a wholesale review of their capital needs. So his submission is different than what we had in our plan. So we need to kind of absorb that and kind of make things fit. The art of this, as you well know, is to look out it's a 6-year capital plan. And the art of it is to spread things out so that you can make routine equipment replacements using available funds, and that the larger projects like roofs and fire stations are spread out so that the debt doesn't stack up on you and have an overlapping harsh impact on the tax impact. So, and you want to also plan your large capital projects for when large projects that you are previously approved drop off. And so we actually are there. The pandemic threw a little bit of a wrench in things. So the fire station project is delayed because we just stopped meeting for all unnecessary boards and committees for several months until we could transition to a Zoom environment. But our overall, here's the thing I want you to keep in mind, that the town's debt service is a little more than 4% of the operating budget. Now, our policy is to have no more than 15%, 10 to 15% of your operating budget, and that's a high number. We are below, 5 to 10% of your operating budget. We're below the floor. That's by design. So we've paid off our debt, right, in anticipation of the next project, the fire station, coming on. So even when that project comes on, our debt service as a percentage of operating budget will probably pop up to about 6%, no more than 7%, and then it'll drop back off. So we're right in that sweet spot, and that's what you want to do if you're planning well. You kind of want that debt service to do this, just steady as you can. It can't be perfect, but you don't want it to spike and then drop down and spike. That's good planning. So those things are all there. As always, as you start to look in the out years, we've got some school building projects that we need to talk about, because we don't decide on those. The state MSBA, Massachusetts School Building Authority, they are our partners. They just generally pick up upwards of 50% of the cost of a school building project. but they have limited funds and we don't get to decide what year we do it. We have to petition them, and it usually takes several years to get in their pipeline. And we've been very successful. As you know, we did the Lincoln Street School. It got a $10.4 million grant for that. So we do very well. But again, you just have to plan these things out. And what happened last year, and because the operating budget ended so tight and the surplus was small this year, we're going to have to shuffle some things around. So this 5-year plan is almost like not a wholesale like redo, but we need to shuffle these things around. Plus we have, as I said, the superintendent has new staff, a new look. They've got new requests. So we need to work those in. And so we just need a little bit of time to get that squared away. It's a lot to take in. And the other thing too is until we had the financial trend monitoring meeting in December 14th, we didn't know if we were going to need these surplus funds to backfill and support the fiscal 22 operating budget, because we didn't know our state aid numbers and we didn't know what the federal government was going to do for assistance. So we're just flying blind. So now that those two things are locked up, I can confidently give you a plan that says we can spend $805,000. We don't need it to support the operating budget. The operating budget will be supported with level services based on our recurring revenues and our state aid that has been provided in the governor's budget preliminarily. So that's kind of where we are at the moment. That's probably a much longer answer, John, than I think you were looking for. But look, I always want to make sure that you guys and anybody that might be watching these meetings at home understands the full context in which we're having these discussions, that we don't just come in and throw a bunch of projects out and say, all right, guys, here's a bunch of projects. What would you like to do? And with no thought to what it does to our debt service or how it impacts our ability to acquire debt at equipment and capital on a reasonable schedule, moving out. And so when something as disruptive as a pandemic and a shutdown of our economy occurs, that's why you call it a plan. You need to revisit your plan, move things around, and it's our job as staff to come back to you guys with something that makes sense and is reasonable, that you can ask questions about and tell us whether or not you agree with it. And so that's kind of where we are. But literally, we've only had a couple of weeks to kind of go through that process because we didn't know what we were going to have for available funds. So, but it's all positive news. It's all good news. I'd like that number to be higher, but I'm not coming to you saying, listen, we don't have any money to do pay as you go. If you want to do any capital, we have to issue debt. We're not saying that. So.
Thanks, John.
All right. So through the chair, unless anybody has any questions on anything that I've covered or anything in the memo that was provided to you, I would turn it over to Scott Charpentier, DPW Director, to run you through an update on the previously approved projects, where we are with those, and what you can expect, in the next 6 to 12 months in terms of completion of those. So, Scott.
Oh, thank you, John. Quickly, before I get into the projects update memo, the question was about some postponement of some of the capital items from last year. Equipment purchases. One of the ideas of our plan is structural stability. We have 10 large dump trucks. These are $250,000 Mack trucks. We buy one every other year. They last about 18 to 20 years. That's the structure, that's the planning, so that if we have to squeeze another year or two out of them because of a pandemic, we can. The same thing goes with our mid-sized dump bodies. We have 7 of those. We buy one every other year. Every 14 to 15 years, we replace them. That's the process, so that when this happens and we have to push off purchasing one of those vehicles, we can. So it's structurally built sound for events like this. I got 2 other small announcements relevant to some grants. We submitted a grant to Mass DOT, the Shared Winter Streets and Space Program. It's geared toward COVID relief and trying to get people outdoors, whether it be for food or retail or recreation. It was for a walking trail, an ADA accessible trail around the senior center, which would hook up to the Edmonds Woods Trail. That one unfortunately was not funded. They funded more roadside sidewalk type work along main streets. There is a grant open right now through the state. It's the Dam and Seawall Removal and Repair Program. We're going to be seeking grant funding for that, for the design and permitting for removal of the dam that the water fund owns, Reservoir Dam. So that application is due, I think, in about a month and a half. We'll put that together. We have a lot of data on that dam, so I believe we're in a good position to get funded. It does require a 25% match, so it's not all free money, but it's a great program to help out communities. The memorandum you have with the project updates includes obviously our pavement management program that we implement on an annual basis. We utilize $500,000 approximately from Chapter 90 funds. We have $300,000 in the operating budget, and we have $300,000 in our capital plan. In calendar 2020, we were able to treat a little over 12 miles of road. Our goal is to touch at least 10% of our roads every year. We have approximately 80 miles of road, so 8 miles. So we did almost 15% of roadways this year, this past year in 2020. You'll see a graph that shows that our roadway rating has gone down slightly. We were at a 73.9 in the end of calendar 19. We just did a new roadway, townwide roadway assessment, and our grade lowered by about a half a point to 73.5. These grades are just like your grades in school. So it's a C grade. It's a very small drop, but there's a reason for that drop. John touched on some of the projects we had to push off. One of them was culverts. We still have to replace the culverts. There's failing culverts. We did the Fisher Street culvert, which was structurally unsound. We replaced the Rice Ave culvert that had failed. We have 3 more culverts that I'll discuss later in my presentation. So these culverts, these projects are $300,000 each. So that's $900,000 in a matter of 4 years removed from the paving program. So having the ability to maintain in the mid 70s, thank you, is good. That's a success. If we can get back on track with capital, maybe we can follow a little more vertical of a line, a little higher line, a positive slope like the yellow slope you see in front of you.
If I can just chime in here, Scott, for a moment. So, if you look at this trend, when we put this pavement management plan together, you've got fiscal 14, 15, 16, 17, you got 3 or 4 years where we were on a really good trend moving up. And that last dip, as Scott mentioned, is really when we had to cut out, we have these culverts that need work. And so we've had to divert some roadway surface. Well, it's all roadway infrastructure money, right? But we'd like to put it in the part that everybody likes, which is paving the roads and making them nice and smooth and beautiful. But the infrastructure that you can't see, these culverts, they're huge in terms of expense to fix them. And so we've had to divert money to kind of take care of that. But the reason why I want to draw your attention to this is because you hear, if you're listening, there's folks that, say why, we should be building more sidewalks. People want sidewalks. They want walkability. Those are all things that we agree with that are positive. We want to do them. It comes down to how you're going to fund them. And even there are grant programs out there. You hear people talk about the Shared Streets grant program, which gives you some funding, but they come with strings attached, and it costs you more to do a roadway under the Complete Streets grant program that it would otherwise. It's all trade-offs, but the bottom line is, yes, we would love to do more sidewalks, but you need to fix it first and take care of the sidewalks that you have. And we have sidewalk assessment that's been done, and we know the sidewalks that need to be repaired. Before we build new ones, we need to fix the ones we have. And then, next, it's like, it's always a trade-off. Like, do you want to spend $100,000 putting a sidewalk in somewhere that's a nice to have versus spending that on maintaining your roads and getting more bang for your buck? In an ideal world, you would do everything. And we sort of had this plan in place that we could conceivably do everything if the state would step up and do their part. And they haven't. They have not increased the amount of money for roadway maintenance in a decade. And so on the selectmen's meeting on Monday, we'll have a draft of our legislative priorities letter. These are basically the priorities that we talked to our legislative delegation about. The number one priority of the town in that letter is additional Chapter 90 roadway money from the state so that we can put this graph back on the right track and do things like sidewalk improvements and the other things that people would like to have. That's a top priority, but this is the fiscal reality of it, and this graph really says it all. So thank you. I appreciate you chiming in.
I'll share my screen, Sean, so I can, let me see. Let me try to share mine. All right, and
it's helpful to share the screen. These guys have the document in front of them, but if somebody at home is watching, they might have a little trouble.
yeah.
Do you want me just to continue to share mine and I'll scroll?
Yeah, that may be best. I'm not. All right.
All right, we're back.
Okay, so
I'll be your wingman, Scott. You just let me know when you want me to scroll. No worries.
thank you. So we stayed on the pavement management. We did a complete drive around and reassessment this year. Our assessment included sidewalks as well. So to date, our roadway infrastructure database includes all of our roadway conditions, all of our curbing and the materials, all of our guardrail condition and material. Curbing includes reveals. We have all of our sidewalks, condition, material, and width. We have all of our wheelchair ramps and our pavement markings, striping as well as symbols. So we have a very large database of our infrastructure compiled. It's taken a number of years to do that. Every other year we do a full assessment and we add another piece to it. The only item that that remains is signage. So next time we do a drive around in 2023, 2022, we will have all the signs. So we're building our database well. You want to go to the Melican image, John?
Scott, quick question before you move on to that. And it might be a dumb question. If there's significant repairs needed to Main Street, presumably that's state highway, how does the town get involved with that?
The state manages their roadways for their own improvement. We can solicit the state to do improvements if need be, but ultimately it's their property and their decision.
Yeah,
that goes for West Main Street as well.
Yeah.
West Main Street all the way over toward Ward Hill is state highway as well.
Yep, thank
So
you.
if you remember, John, a few years back, we had a whole traffic improvement project down through the center of town. It was over $4 million. We worked closely with the state, but they paid for it and they did the work
Yep.
and we coordinated with them. So.
Yep, okay, thank you.
So the next project on the update is our Melican Middle School lighting project. So back in 2017, one of the timber lighting poles actually fell during school. It fell on the tennis courts. Luckily, no kids weren't outside, but it was a substantial failure. I went out there personally after that, assessed the condition of each one of the other utility timber poles. They were all exhibiting rot right within the loom layer. So you dig down maybe a foot, you test the wood, and it was rotted. So we had all the poles removed. The decision was to go to CPC requesting funding for replacement lighting. The old lighting was set up so that it was only lighting the softball field and baseball field you see in front of you. When I brought in our consultant, our design consultant, to look at it, I started visualizing how we could expand the lighting, because lighting technology has come a long way. So what you see before you is, you can see the 6 dots that go around the perimeter of the large square. That large square actually contains 2 full-size rectangular playing fields, football, soccer, lacrosse, field hockey, etc. So the lighting that was installed provides adequate space as well as safe run-out space, because you can't have a light pole right on the sideline, for 2 full-size athletic fields. Due to the cost of the project, which was over almost $600,000, we had to go to 2 town meetings to fund it through CPC. The first one was to procure the lights. We got a very competitive and advantageous number, such that we were able to upgrade them to LEDs. They have a 20-year warranty on them. And the following year, we installed them and did some minor grading improvements to the wet spot that's kind of in the back lower right-hand corner, lower left-hand corner as you're looking at the image. It wasn't a field construction project. It was a lighting project, but they're installed, they're functional. They look fantastic. They don't take 20 minutes to warm up like the old ones did. And you can operate them with an app. It's got a cellular communicator. Our rec director was able to turn the lights on from home on request. So it's a robust system. It's the best of the best, and it's going to make a wonderful facility that can be used, night and day. So the project is 100% complete. The work is done. The lights are functional, and as soon as outdoor athletics returns for our youth, I'm sure they'll be out there to enjoy it. The next project we have, if you want to get to the photograph, John, is thank you, is our culvert replacements. So I hinted toward that earlier, that we have failing culverts in town, many of them. We did a full culvert inventory 2 years ago. We have all that in GIS, and the data is available. This photograph is the culvert under Davis Ave. That's the outlet of the pipe. That's not uncommon for what we have in town. Water flows through the galvanized steel pipe. The sediment in the water takes away the galvanizing, and then you rot out the bottom. This is the exact same thing that happened to Rice Ave, except it rotted it up about halfway up, and the whole pipe literally just fell down. Above this pipe, there's a barrel you'll see. There's a sinkhole under that barrel that goes right down to the culvert. This culvert has been designed, permitted, and bid out for replacement. We're also doing the one on Ridge Road. If you traveled Ridge Road in the past few months, you bumped over some steel plates. That's because there's a huge hole under them. It's almost the same exact culvert condition. We're also doing one on Lyman Street. Lyman Street is not a box, and it's not a steel pipe. It's a stone box culvert. It must have failed years ago, and the solution at that point was to slide a smaller pipe in the outlet side, so it goes maybe halfway up. So you go from a large box on the inlet side to a smaller circular pipe. Not good for flow and for debris. And that overtops sometimes. So we got a very competitive bid. It was awarded to the same contractor that did the Fisher Street culvert a few years ago. You'll see in the memorandum, our bid prices are $76,000 for Lyman, and then $91,000 and $107,000 for Davis and Ridge. So the expectations that work will be beginning this summer. They have to do it during low flow season. I had a pre-construction meeting this morning with the contractor. Ridge and Davis Ave will be closed during construction to facilitate and quicken it up. And Lyman will be, traffic will be open the entire time in one direction. single lane bidirectional traffic. So the goal and objective is to get this done before the school year starts.
So I'm going to interject here because, it's important that people understand how we got here. So for a long time, there wasn't good infrastructure planning, inventory, and there wasn't a good improvement plan. And so under the previous director that I had hired, we discovered, you remember the Otis Street culvert up there? That's the one we discovered was in really bad shape, and we had to close that roadway. And this is when the previous director had just started, and we realized that the prior administrations didn't have a handle on culverts and or roadways, and that's when the pavement management plan came forward. But what we did is we took an inventory of all of our culverts, and we have prioritized replacement of these old culverts that basically have been ignored. And so in the interim, after getting a handle on this, we've done the Otis Street culvert. We replaced the Church Street culvert. We did the Fisher Street culvert. We did the Rice Ave culvert. What am I missing? Is that where those are the big ones we're up on? And then now we have Ridge Road, the Lyman Street, and Davis Ave that are next. So going from the biggest ones down to the smaller culverts, and the cost is unbelievable. So the Church Street culvert, because it had the bridge, was a $2 million project. It's significant. These other ones, Rice Ave was 300,000 or so, Scott.
Yep.
So, and they're significant, and there's no real good state aid program for these. It's kind of like, look, it's kind of like your house, okay? If you don't, your roof replacement should not sneak up on you, okay? Culverts, roadways, roofs, if these things sneak up on you and you have culverts that look like this, there's only one reason for that: poor planning. And so when the new administration came in and the new DPW director came on board, we immediately set the task of getting an assessment of our roadways and our infrastructure, and then planning these things out in a coordinated fashion. I don't want anybody at home to sit there and sit here and go, well, gee, so clearly nobody's done any planning. We've done the assessment, we've done the planning. I just listed all the culverts we fixed already, and those are the most expensive ones. Fisher Street was over $300,000 as well. And now we're getting down to some of the smaller ones. In fact, we had within the capital plan, we wanted to dedicate $250,000 every year to be doing culverts. We have, how many culverts do we have?
A little over 70.
Over 70. They're not all $2 million or $600,000 culverts. Some of them are, pipes under the road here. But when you get into conservation restrictions now and Wetlands Protection Act stuff, these are expensive projects. You would think, well, just put a pipe under the road. It's not that simple. But we have been replacing these, and we have a good inventory now, and we will continue. And as Scott said, the plan is to do 3 culverts in the upcoming year. Now, the downside to this, guys, is when we have limited roadway money and we are assessing our needs, ignorance is bliss. If you don't know what your needs are, we're not showing you the problems. This is a fair assessment of our infrastructure, but that was done by the new administration and myself and the new director when he came in. It needs to be addressed. So we're putting forward plans to do that. But I don't want to give anybody the impression that, this is the current, I don't want anybody to think that our current DPW director is responsible for this situation. He's been actively addressing it and very financially carefully. He's been unbelievable with how he stretched the money to get these projects done and bring them in at reasonable prices. So it's good. The good news is I think we're over the big hump of the big expensive culverts that are really dangerous. And now, but we do have a lot of other ones that need to be done, but now you're talking about $75,000, $100,000 type culverts. That's why what we want to do is build into the plan a pocket of money every other year to put these on a regular replacement schedule, just like you do your roads or your trucks, because that's the right way to do it. That was one of the projects last year, the $250,000 for culvert replacement. That's one of the projects that got bumped. So we may have to talk about potentially financing these things in the future, or we get back on track. But I just want people to have that context. I don't want people to say, well, that's obvious, you should have been fixing it. These are 20-year problems. They don't sneak up on you. And when they do sneak up on you, it means that you failed to watch them. But that's not the current administration, and it certainly isn't my current DPW director. So I want people to realize that. So
Thank you,
sorry,
John.
go ahead, Scott.
So one thing to
Question.
consider. I'm sorry, go ahead. You had a question, John?
Scott? We replacing, when the time comes, galvanized with galvanized or other material? And what's the expected useful life of a new culvert?
Good question.
We're replacing everything with precast concrete. So one of the anomalies in the Commonwealth that is a challenge is utilities with our culverts. So the state has some grant money out for river crossing improvements. So, you know, for example, this culvert itself, we could apply for some grant money. It would have to comply with the river crossing standards, which means it has to have a natural bottom. It has to have 3 times the opening, and the height, the opening width can only be 3 times the height, and it needs to be beyond the banks of the river. So the water that's coming in and coming out, those streams, is going to be beyond that. Where the challenge comes in, for example, this one, we have a 3-inch gas main on top of it. We have an 8-inch water main on one side of the road and a 12-inch sewer main on the other side of the road. This is literally going to thread the needle in order to put this an RCP pipe in here, like to the point where they can't put the bell near the other utilities. So it's a challenge. You know, we're going to be able to improve Ridge Road a little bit by putting some natural bottom on a box culvert. But Lyman, I can't do it. I have a massive water main in Lyman Street, so and it's right, the culvert's, you know, right below it on that one. So it's a challenge. You know, we seek out funds wherever we can get them. They just don't always apply to what our needs are. Go to the park, the playground. So the Assabet Playground project, this was funded at town meeting last year. There was a few projects that went forward. This one went forward because we were ordered by we negotiated with the court to get this project done. John, I don't know if you want to give them a quick briefing on that.
So we got into a legal dispute with the Architectural Access Board. There was an individual who filed a complaint, and it was an advocate who goes all around the state and files complaints. It wasn't a Northborough resident. But the Architectural Access Board took the position, you know, that mulch isn't an accessibly compliant medium. And I don't necessarily disagree with that, but this playground is 20 years old. And the way the ADA typically works is when you improve or you make a change or you upgrade, you have to become code compliant with today's standards. That's a normal process, right? Well, the Architectural Access Board took the position that every time we put mulch down around the play equipment, that was a upgrade that triggered us to become completely compliant. Now, I disagree with that, and respectfully, but I also understand that the goal here is to have an ADA compliant playground. That is what we should be striving for. And so we went into Boston, we met with the Architectural Access Board. I showed them our capital improvement plan. I showed them our award-winning budget. And I said, give me 3 years so that I can get CPC funds, maybe a playground grant and some free cash, and I can schedule and do this right. Not only will we put a handicapped accessible strip around the equipment, I said, That's kind of foolish money to spend, because if you do that, the equipment itself isn't handicap accessible. So now the child in a wheelchair can wheel up to a piece of equipment that they can't enjoy, right? That doesn't make sense. Let us make the whole park compliant. That's where we want to get. Unfortunately, they said, no, we want it done. You have 6 months to do it. So we appealed. And under that appeal, we were able to negotiate the time frame that we asked for to begin with. And we're using CPC funds, and we're using free cash. And we had the time working with Scott to redesign a whole new playground there and get rid of the 20-year-old equipment that's not ADA compliant and is starting to show its wear, and to do the project right. And so that's where we are right now. I'm very excited for this project. It's unfortunate that we couldn't have worked in a more partnership, a better partnership with the Architectural Access Board, but they exist for one reason, and I understand that. But here we are, and Scott, you can take them into, there's an update on here where the design is and where the project is. In my opinion, this is a success for us, because we didn't throw cheap money at a problem to make it go away and left us with a poor facility that really it would have been bad money spent. So this is the right way to do it.
Thank you. So, yeah, the project was funded at town meeting, CPC funds as well as free cash. We engaged the services of a landscape architect who does, he specializes in playgrounds. It's what he does. He loves it. We've gone through a bunch of different design layouts. We haven't gotten into the depths of equipment selection yet. It's been program costs to make sure we stay within budget. But we're looking at poured rubberized play surfaces. We're removing the basketball courts that don't really make a lot of sense, having 16-year-old kids playing basketball next to 3-year-old kids playing in a sandbox. They have basketball at Ellsworth. That's that group. So it's a much larger play space. We had a couple targets we wanted to hit with maybe a little bit of a shade structure. There's a pretty good sized hill on the back side of the park. Instead of having a kid climb a ladder to get up a slide, have them go up a little hill and slide down the hill. It's kind of cool. So there's some features in here I think that we can utilize to make this a really beautiful park for everybody to enjoy. So we have layouts. We're reaching out to equipment suppliers and finding out what's available within the budget. And our next step is to get together with some stakeholders in the community. There's been some residents who have expressed interest in helping us go through this process. So we're going to get together with them and talk about a little more of the detail. It's going to be a wonderful project. It's going to look beautiful. That play equipment was old. It was showing its age. We did everything we could to maintain it as best we could, but it was time. So our goal is to get this out to bid in the middle of the spring, for construction in the summer and fall. The lead time on play equipment can be pretty long sometimes. It's not like they have it on the shelf in a box and you just go get it. It's custom manufactured. So depending on the lead time, my hope was to get somebody utilizing the facility this fall. I don't know. It depends on the lead time. But again, the project's moving forward. We got a great team. I'm working with our rec director, Allie Lane. She's been very helpful. She's connected with the community and the parents who utilize this park. So it's so far we're making good progress.
Mark, quick question.
Yep.
First, that looks great. Is there the splash pad going to stay?
The splash pad is going to stay. We don't have any needs to do any improvements at the splash pad. If you look at the image in the very bottom, there's a semicircle with a small gray, right there. So that is at splash pad elevation. So the walkway between there and the blue poured rubber is a ADA compliant slope. So, and that's an open shade structure. So parents can sit with their little ones behind them splashing, and they're at that level while they're also looking down to the playground at their other kids playing. There will be gated, so, you know, playground kids aren't running to the splash pad. That was always a challenge for parents when you didn't dress them for the splash pad and you look over your shoulder and there they are. It changes the ride home.
I've had that happen.
Yeah, so we're thinking about all those little things, and bringing Ally Lane and some of the stakeholders really helps vet out those fine-tuned design changes.
Yeah, looks great.
So this one's pretty quick. We had some struggles, obviously, in the capital funding last year at town meeting. Milliken Middle School had some needs. Their parking lot was in need of some maintenance in the form of crack sealing, and then crack filling, and then sealing. And more importantly, I believe they had some accessibility issues at the now only polling station in the town. You know, we were having to rent portable ramps to allow wheelchair access to our polling station. I don't think that's the right way to do things. I think the facility should have wheelchair accessibility regardless of whether we're polling there or not. Funding was a challenge, so we working in conjunction with the school department, we were able to cut the budget in half by utilizing DPW services, mine basically, to design the ramps, procure contractors to do the work, utilize standing contracts we have to do the parking lot work, and get it all done before the school year started, even during the fiascos of our pandemic. So I'm happy to say the project is complete. All the ramps are in, they're compliant, they're concrete, they're in good shape. They're fully compliant. The parking lot has been sealed, restriped, made some modifications to pedestrian and wheelchair circulation that I believe improve safety at the school. So it's a nice, teamwork project that we got done.
Yeah, the schools were great to work with, and I got to say, Scott's the one that brought this one over the goal line. He shouldered all the work that should have been built into the cost of the project, where the schools would have been overseeing a project manager, someone designing all that. Scott did all that stuff in-house himself personally, so that was a huge bet. Not necessarily the way we can always do it, but under these circumstances, I appreciate him stepping up.
Thank you. This project hasn't been funded yet. It hasn't. It's gone before the CPC. So pickleball is a rising sport. It's one of the fastest rising sports in the country. If you guys have driven by Lake Chauncey in Westboro, across the street from the lake, from the beach, there used to be tennis courts there. Well, they're no longer tennis courts. They are now pickleball courts, and they are crowded all the time. It's a very popular sport amongst not just the seniors, the middle-aged folks, and some of the high schools are even teaching pickleball in gym class. If you're not familiar with it, it's kind of like
tennis and ping pong had a baby.
Yeah, exactly. Ping pong and tennis had a baby.
Using big, giant ping pong balls and rackets,
right,
over a smaller court.
It's pretty cool. I mean, it looks fun. But there's a need for it in the community. We have one pickleball facility that is the town hall gym that we allow for use. One is not enough. It's limited use because it's in our town hall and it's not available all the time. And it's also shared, the town hall gym is shared with children's programs that we used to hold here at town hall, as well as some youth basketball. So there's a lot of users in that gym and not a lot of time. And we've been asked for many years to add pickleball to our facilities.
This is the single largest recreational ask for the last 3 to 4 years. So
we evaluated a bunch of different sites around town, all town-owned properties. They were, for one reason or another, they were other locations were dismissed or to be less than favorable until we got to Ellsworth. So to give you the proximity, as soon as you pull into Ellsworth, McAfee Park, left-hand side, there's that big open grass area. Some of it is often used for people utilizing the pavilion, but very rarely does anybody get all the way down towards South Street. The pavilion sun area that they use is usually right by the pavilion. Where it opens up like this is rarely, if ever, used. It's a good location. I think it's a great benefit for parents when you bring your child to, youth soccer, youth lacrosse practice. You don't have to just sit in your car and play on your phone. You can get your pickleball paddle and walk over there and play a game. It'll bring another user group to this facility, and I'm really looking forward to the project.
I think it also adds a nice element when you drive by or drive through the town and you see people out doing recreational things, enjoying things. It has this, nice look and feel of people out enjoying the community, and it's a beautiful park, and this will be a great asset. And by the way, the CPC has recommended approval of this, so this will go to town meeting, and they will be looking for your support on this project.
Yeah, we went to the CPC. We had our meeting. They were all in favor for it. It got a lot of positive responses through social media. The project cost is $290,000. It's going to be a wonderful addition to the facility. It really is. So this is our water sewer operations building. This was funded through 2 town meeting allocations. The most recent, the 2020 town meeting, approved $900,000 for construction of the building. It's roughly the same size as the existing building. The existing building was built back in '64, when there was only a water department. There was no sewer in town. It now houses a water and sewer department. The need for a second building is glaring when you go down there. We have, our jetter truck, our valve turning trailer, our backhoe, a lot of equipment outside, and having a backhoe stored outside is not that big of a deal. When you have an $80,000 valve turning trailer that has onboard decimeter GPS capabilities and computer panels and keyboard panel, that should not be outdoors. That's waiting for a mouse to cause thousands of dollars of damage. So we need to get these facilities indoors, as well as provide an updated workspace for SCADA stations and layout tables and things like that. So the project was bid out and awarded $680,000 to a general contractor. He's on site now. He has installed the foundation. Foundation walls are in. He's currently going through the backfilling process and going to be preparing for the interior slab pour. The project is a little unique in that when we did the original project construction cost estimate, it was well north of $1.2 million. It was almost $1.5 million. And I didn't want to put that in the rate model. I did not feel comfortable burdening the sewer users and water users with that large bill. So we put our thinking caps on and came up with an alternative. So we're bidding out the foundation, the envelope, and the rough-in utilities. And then everything on the inside, we're going to buy the materials, and the Assabet Technical School will be doing the construction. It's going to be, our engineers are going to be securing the building permits for each one of the trades. The kids are going to do the work and with their teachers. I'm going to serve as a GC on it. Fingers crossed. I'll be the GC, and at the end of the day, it's going to be a fantastic facility. And I think for the children, for the students, it gives them an opportunity to do something that they would never do before, and they will for the rest of their lives. If you're a carpenter nowadays, unless you're doing residential construction, you're going to work in one of these buildings. You're going to work in a prefabricated metal building, and you're going to be dealing with this type of structure. Same thing with the electricians and the HVAC. Not many large-scale commercial buildings are stick-built. So they're going to give these tradesmen an opportunity to work the way they're going to work in the future. So I'm really looking forward to it. This is our Assabet Hill water storage tank. We're putting it out to bid in the coming month. We held it for a little while. Doing work on a water storage tank is not easy. You can't do it in the winter because it's winter, And you can't do it in the summer because everybody needs water. You can't do it during high demand because you got to drain the tank. So there's like these two little windows of hopefully spring isn't snowing and hopefully nor'easters aren't in the fall. So it's a real challenge doing water tank work. So the timing for bidding is critical. So we're going to be putting this out February into March, so we can have an award in March and in April shop drawings, and hopefully May the weather is right and we can get to work. Again, the project includes repairing and coating our 3.5 million gallon storage tank on the top of Aspet Hill. That is our #1 storage tank. We have 1 million gallons over on Edmonds Hill that serves relatively little to no purpose for the town. So this is our primary tank. We're going to have an improved controls building there. As part of our SCADA project, we need a structure to put some computer gear in. We'll also have a sample port that doesn't require confined space entry. Right now, in order to draw samples that we're required to draw, we have to go into a confined space, which doesn't make a lot of sense from a safety perspective. And then on top of that, we're installing a non-mechanical mixing system inside the tank. Most tanks, you got one pipe that goes in, one pipe that goes out, the same pipe. And your pipe is just on the bottom of the tank. So you're constantly pushing in and drawing out of the same area of the tank. A non-mechanical mixing system, you take that pipe and you put a big T on it. So a pipe runs horizontally across the bottom of the tank, and it's got a whole bunch of what looks like duck bills pointing up. And they allow water to shoot up, mixing the water. And then they have intakes at the bottom of each one of those duck bills that sucks the water in. So you're mixing the water and you're drawing it from different parts of the tank. It'll provide a substantial water quality improvement for the community. And the most exciting one, got to end on a high note, right, John, is my incremental sewer pump station improvements projects. So we put in our operating budget back in FY19, $60,000 to just chip away at our pump stations. Spending $400,000 and rebuilding West Main Street was warranted. That serves our restaurants and our commercial zone and our school, Lincoln Street. That's a critical pump station. That was warranted. Hudson Street pump station, that needed to be rebuilt. Some of these other ones, we can just chip away at them, $60,000 a year, and just take care of the smaller things. For example, Forbes Road. There was a generator at Forbes Road. It was not on an automatic switch, and it didn't have an alarm, a call-out alarm. It had a light. So when the power was lost, the light goes on. Well, if nobody sees the light and nobody calls the police, sewer doesn't go out there and literally flick the switch for the generator to go on. So we wanted to get an automatic generator, an automatic transfer switch, and a new generator. Ironically enough, after the award of the bid and before the generator was delivered, the old generator blew the rear main bearing. So it literally blew up. The main bearing just blew apart. So it was absolutely needed, even more than we thought it was. It's installed, it's commissioned, it's running great, it self-exercises. It's mandated by the EPA that we have backup generator at all of our pump stations. It's mandated. So this one is done. Next year maybe we throw $20,000 at this one for some communication gear. A little auto dialer with a cell phone that buzzes to dispatch. FY 2021 we're in now, we're doing a generator at Weston Terrace. Right now there is no generator there. So when they lose power, there's no option. We literally have a pump truck on standby.
So if I may chime in here, a very similar situation in terms of our pump stations as with our roads, and that is, previous administration and older administration, DPW, really wasn't watching this stuff. When Scott's predecessor, when I hired Scott's predecessor to come in, he went through all the pump stations. We redid the pump station on Hudson Street for $1.5 million. Remember, that takes 99% of the flow of the town and sends it to the Wesley treatment plant in Marlboro. So that was money well spent. That pump station was 20 years old, in rough shape. But then the previous DPW director then put it in the capital plan because, again, you identify the needs, you put it in the plan, and then you talk about it and you refine it. But those of you that have been on the committee for a long time, I remember Dave DeFries, the chairman, kind of his eyes widening when all of a sudden, every other year, we had a $300,000 to $400,000 pump station rebuild. And so, okay, it's great. We identified that these pump stations need to be upgraded and they need help. And then Scott came in and devised this plan where we're doing incremental improvements and we're able to go in some instances, upgrade the motors, the pumps that are inside, replace the generators. You don't need to do a $400,000 rehab to a pump station that serves, in this case, Weston Terrace. Weston Terrace serves what, a dozen to 16 homes, right? So it doesn't make sense. There's a pump station out in the back of Town Hall that takes care of Town Hall and the Housing Authority property. Then that was in the plan for $350,000. We'll end up doing that for short money, replacing those pumps and making some improvements there. The backup generator, the pumps, and the communications are being upgraded. And the beauty of this, and this is where you guys were really happy, and you should be, is that this is baked into the operating budget on an annual basis. You're taking care of these things. You're not just waiting until you need to do a $400,000 rehab to every one of these pump stations. So we took care of the big ones. There may be more, something more substantial in the future, but the Scott's plan is to upgrade and deal with these on an annual basis, and puts us in good shape. We know that the pumps are good, the backup generator is good, and the emergency communication systems are good. As I always say, as long as the stuff that's being pumped goes where you want it to, which is away from where you are, you're doing okay.
So that's
Question.
Yep.
How many pump stations are there in town that need to be addressed in the future going forward?
Well, there's 7 pump stations. Weston Terrace is getting their generator. Town Hall needs some controls work. Of the 7 generators, 5 of them will need some communication improvements at some point. And my next step, once I get the generating done, which is a EPA compliance issue, my next step is to start to get system equipment uniformity. I'm sorry. So I don't really want a Smith and Lovelace at one station and then have a Vector at another station. As much as we can do it, impellers should be the same. The motors should be the same. The volutes should be the same. As much as I can do that. So, for example, if you have an impeller go, the spinny thing on the bottom that's sucking all the bad stuff out of the wet well, those are like a 2 or 3 month lead time. They cast those and machine them per order. They're very expensive. I'd like to have one that would fit 4 stations on the shelf. If one breaks,
Interoperability, yeah, makes sense.
So that's my next process once I get us to be fully compliant with backup power.
So we did the main pump station on Hudson Street. We did the west main pump station, complete rehab. Those are 2 of the bigger ones. And then several incremental improvements. Scott, I don't know if we have anything in the plan for the next 5 years of a $300,000 or $400,000 rehab for any of these. No. So Scott's plan is to address the balance of the smaller pump stations through this incremental improvement program, which is part of the operating budget. That's the right way to do this. All right, so I think that was the last thing. Attachment A is just you can see a list of the streets that and the work that was done on them for 2020. All right. So that was the update. The only other update through the chair, if I may, that is, it's not technically a DPW project, but you know, a nice baseball analogy. I love a good utility player, and Scott is the ultimate utility player for me. So whenever I have a project that I can't find a home for, I come knocking on his door. As you know, we had a feasibility and reuse assessment that was done on the White Cliff structure in town that we acquired. This is Mike Hodges' favorite project. So that report is complete now. And what I would recommend that you do is go onto the White Cliffs Committee page, review the report, and if you are so inclined, watch their last meeting where the architect did the presentation. And that will give you a sense of kind of where we are with the project. But the report is complete. But one of the things that was done as part of that assessment, the architect was asked to identify immediate projects that were needed to secure the building envelope to prevent water infiltration in the elements so that we can essentially preserve the building. And so that was a roof replacement, sealing off some of the additions that are leaking and need to be ultimately removed, assessing the chimney, rebuilding of the dormer in back. All those projects, Scott was the one who did the project management on to get all that stuff done to help secure the building. I think his biggest success was we had, working with the architect, put out a bid for a new roof, and the roof bids came in between $360,000 and $1 million. It was utterly ridiculous. Scott found the local, first of all, we got a DCAM, a Department of Capital Asset Management emergency waiver because the roof was leaking. So we got a special waiver from the state to allow us to go around some of the procurement laws. Scott was able to find the local roofer from Northborough who put the roof on that place 20 years ago. And he did that project for $100,000, 1/10 of what one of the bids was. And he did a beautiful job because he took pride in it. He also found some local carpenters to rebuild the back dormer and to do some of the work that we received these outrageous bids to do when we put it out formally with the architect, to find these people, local craftsmen who were willing to work with the town, and they did some beautiful work for us. So the building envelope isn't perfect, but it's much more secure. The water infiltration has been addressed, and Scott worked on all of those projects. But if you want to know where the status of this building is, go on the website. The final report is there, and the final presentation is there. Ultimately, we're in the process now of putting a request for proposals together to go out on the street to find and identify somebody in the private sector that is willing to partner with us to rehab that building, with the idea that the town paid for the acquisition, and we have put some money in to secure the building envelope and to stabilize the structure. And now we're looking for a private sector partner to come in and through some sort of a long-term lease agreement, hopefully work with us to bring that building back online for public enjoyment. So that's what that project is, but I just want Scott to get credit for yeoman-like work that he did to get the roof and this other work done for us. And he's tenacious in chasing down contractors and doing some of the work to make sure we get the most bang for our buck on those types of projects. So that's what we have for you tonight for an update. Certainly can answer any questions that you might have about anything that we covered. Oh, you guys just want to go home or turn off you, since you're already home, just turn off your computers. And so
A lot of good work to pull this together, John and team. Thank you.
I appreciate that, John.
Scott, obviously for your part.
Thank you.
We take great pride in having logical plans that are laid out, that are financially sound, and that are that provide a level of predictability and stability financially for the town. There's always going to be surprises like pandemics and snowstorms and blizzards, but the things that we control, the things that we can plan for, that's that's what you should be asking us about. And that's what we should be providing you with as an advisory committee. You should feel comfortable with what we're doing. It's not always perfect. There's always going to be problems. But as I said, things like roofs and culverts and roads do not sneak up on you. You assess them. Look, if we don't have the money and we choose to postpone a project, you at least are doing it from a position of strength in understanding that if you postpone it, it may cost you more later, but you're willing to make that trade-off because you're trying to get something else done or fit something else in. You're not just doing this blind. That's the point of this planning process. And I know we have a lot of new interested people out there with regard to capital improvements. There's a group out there that just is very passionate about sidewalks, and we get that. And we will address it, but it has to be in this context. You can't just come in and say, we want new sidewalks and we want those now. And there has to be part of the plan. Okay. It needs to be all part of how you're going to approach this stuff holistically. So through the chair, one of the things that is on the agenda that I did want to talk about is just your schedule. So because of everything that transpired at the federal and the state level, we're running a month and a half behind on where we would normally be with a lot of this type of stuff. So you would normally meet Thursdays. I alternate generally appropriations one Thursday and financial planning the next Thursday. What I'd like to do is see if you folks are available and to move you to a different night of the week, because what's going to happen is we're going to have to meet with both committees oftentimes on the same week. So I was hoping that we can maybe work out a Tuesday night schedule if that works for you folks. Now, we could never do this before because literally we don't have the space because other boards and committees are meeting. And so we get jammed up and, you can't just meet in the hallway. It has to be publicly accessible. But since we're all virtual now, that space issue is no longer there for us. So what I would suggest or put out there for a discussion is to see if you folks are available for 3 consecutive Tuesdays, beginning on February 16th, February 23rd, and March 3rd. And the way I would lay that out as you're looking at your calendars is on the 16th, we would come in, give you an overview on the new 6-year plan as we try to space out and find a slot for all of the projects. So a new 6-year plan laid out for you through all the departmental projects to try to spread things out. A discussion regarding the fiscal 2022 capital projects that we think we can fit in. And then I would bring in the police chief and the fire chief to talk about their projects. So that would be on the meeting on the 16th. Your meeting on the 23rd, since I knew Scott had a lot to talk about tonight and we don't need to be here till 10 o'clock, wanted to break it apart. Scott will talk about the DPW's projects for fiscal 2022, but also for the next 6 years out, so you can see how those things lay out. And we want to want to get some feedback from the committee if this stuff makes sense to you, that's a good approach. And then on March 3rd, hopefully, we can discuss the CPC projects like pickleball and start talking about your recommendations for the fiscal 2022 capital budget projects for town meeting coming up. Now, as I said at the beginning, the fiscal 22 capital budget is relatively benign. It's equipment replacements. There's no major building projects, nothing we're hopefully going to be bonding for. There's no big water and sewer things. We're talking about trucks, equipment replacements, cruisers, a command vehicle for the fire department, and that's pretty much it. So I don't think it's, you need to have, we'll have as many meetings as you need to feel comfortable with what we're recommending, of course, and we'll give you whatever information you request. But this cycle through, I don't think we don't have any real big projects. So I'm hoping, based on the financial trend monitoring meeting, the meeting tonight, and then 3 more meetings, we should be pretty good to wrap up. But again, we can meet in as much depth as you want. We are going to need to spend some time kind of looking at, we don't need to make a decision in the next 3 weeks about, are we going to issue a bond next year? But because we don't know what we're going to wind up with free cash for next year yet, so it's premature. But we need to start looking at, well, if we do get into a bind, we're probably going to need to finance that school roof. I just can't pay cash for a $600,000 roof. So we can have some of those discussions now. But that's
Hey,
pretty
John?
much how I see the workload laying out for this committee in this cycle.
Hey, John?
Yes,
Just quickly, so you have the 9th, the 16th, the 23rd.
I have the
then-
16th, the 23rd, and March 2nd. I don't have the 9th.
March 2nd, okay.
Yep, I need
Nice.
1 week window in here to get appropriations up and running and to do the work that we just kind of talked about, getting the plan together for you guys. And when we get it together, I'd like to, it's interesting with this new format that we have, I think it's helpful, like, to be able to pull up a document and a photograph. So as you were going through the memo, if somebody at home is interested, they can see the numbers. The rule of thumb is once you say more than 3 numbers in a presentation, you start losing people unless they have it in front of them. So we want to have a chance to package this up in a visually attractive presentation for you, so that as we go through, if people want to watch and participate. My goal here, one of the things I think that we need to do here is we have a lot, as I said, people that are sort of coming to the process new. And a lot of this is educating people of that, there's context that they need to be aware of. And we're not saying no, we're just saying, well, how does your idea or what you'd like to see, how does it fit into the bigger picture? And where does it fit in? And just like the discussion we had with the Architectural Access Board, yes, I know you'd like me to do this in 6 months, but no, that's not possible. We need more time. And we might possibly be able to get some grants and bring some other resources to bear. And that's why the plan is important. And the plan changes all the time. You guys see large projects fall off your plan because we wind up getting grants for them, right? Or we get other sources of funding, CPC partnership, or we bring Assabet Valley in to do the labor, and instead we just have to come up with a little bit of material cost, like the projects we did down at 135, right? The gazebo, the pavilion, the structure down at Memorial Field. We did all those out of the operating budget for the cost of materials. But you got to get on Assabet's schedule 2 years in advance. So you got to plan these things out. So anyway, I know the meeting's gone a little long, but so just in terms of the schedule, the 16th, the 23rd in February, and March 2nd, do those dates work?
John, can we do something about February 23rd? Can we pick a different day? Does anybody else have a problem with that day?
I can do the 24th. That's a Wednesday.
That would be better for me.
It jams me up against appropriations the next night, but that's enough time that we can plan.
That's fine.
So
Okay.
Scott Charpentier, that would be your night for DPW, which would be the Wednesday, the 24th. Does that work for you?
Yep, no problem.
Then we should be
Alright.
good on our side.
16, 24, and the 2nd.
Correct. And then we can, if you need another meeting after that to finalize your report or to have a, any kind of a joint meeting with any other boards and committees, we'll try to schedule the CPC to come in on March 2nd to talk about their projects. That would be a good night for them to come in. And I think that fits everybody in without
Okay.
crowding things or, having 5-hour meetings.
Sounds good.
Excellent. I don't know if anybody has any other business to come before the committee. Sorry, I'm doing the chairman's wrap up here.
That's fine. All right.
Any other questions? Is there any other information that you'd like us to start working on for a future meeting that you don't normally get through the regular process? If there is, you can let the chairman know. And like I always say, look, we'll give you as much detail as you want. But we start with a summary overview so that you can ask logical questions as that funnel comes down. Like I said, we can kill you with detail if you like it, but if you don't understand the big picture and why we're doing it from a policy standpoint and a fiscal stability standpoint, then the details don't matter.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have anything? No? Looking for a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I hear a
Second.
second?
Second.
Second.
All those in favor of adjournment, say aye. Tom,
Aye.
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
aye. Okay, meeting's adjourned.
Who was the second before everybody cuts out? Who was the second on the motion to adjourn?
I was.
All right. I have my